and then maybe we go get our refreshments and return to our tables and have a little lively discussion of the working group kind of during that networking time. There should still be time, I think, to mingle as well, but that should hopefully kind of keep us on track with what we were hoping to do today. So with that, I will introduce Bob Toy. First off, I was really excited when Bob offered to present because I think this is a unique perspective coming from the rail industry. We hear a lot about work that's being done on roadsides and in utility areas. And Bob has been involved in the working group since the very first meeting a year ago. So he's also on our steering committee. So very involved, enthusiastic, supportive member. And so I think this will be a unique opportunity to hear a little bit about how Union Pacific is approaching habitat. Bob is the Director of Environment at Union Pacific Railroad. He's responsible for the company's environmental compliance and initiatives, engaging UP's 43,000 employees, and communicating regarding stewardship. He has 26 years of railroad experience, and interestingly enough was a TV news reporter before Union Pacific. He worked in marketing and sales as well as technology prior to his current role. He's a Bachelor of Journalism from University of Missouri, Columbia, and an MBA from Northwestern University. He and his wife Maureen have 3 children, and he's active in several ministries in Omaha. So welcome, Bob.
All right. Okay. Hopefully I'll do it right. So Iris, if you'd introduced alcohol at 1 o'clock, this would have been even more fun, I bet. Well, Doug and Christine and Carol have confirmed to me that I am the least qualified to talk in the entire room, and so thank you for the wisdom that you all provided. And so if you heard my degrees, a Bachelor of Journalism and an MBA, you know, that has nothing to do with habitats and vegetation at all. So you're going to get basically something that is somebody that is a marketing guy talking, which I think actually may be helpful. At least I hope it's helpful. So we're a company, we're a business. We're trying to make money, and we're not in the business of managing, or at least I'm not, of managing vegetation. So if we were to collaborate, that's been the fun part for me to participate here. So, hey, that worked first, so that's good. Here's a few of the things I wanted to talk about today. We're part of this working group, of course, and we're working closely with Wildlife Habitat Council. Thank you, Sarah, for giving us your expertise. We've got 8 locations that are in various stages of planting, and we're learning. And so I'll explain a little bit about that. And then we're exploring local relationships where it makes sense as well. To talk about us, I probably need to give you a little bit of background, right, of who we are. If you've heard of a guy named Abraham Lincoln, he's the one who founded our company 150 some years ago, and founded it as Union Pacific, and all these years later it's still the same name, a little bit bigger than what it was back then. But so our company is the one that started in Omaha. The president, before he was president, or maybe when he was before he was president, he came and he saw the land, and after he was president, he said, let's start it there. And we're the ones that started in Omaha, and we met the Central Pacific that started in San Francisco, and today that's us. And a little bit of context for us. So you see our route structure. We're in 23 western states, basically the Mississippi River West, 32,000 miles of track, and 43,000 employees. So we cover a huge swath of the country, and many of the things that you've used today, whether it was your car to get here, or the rail that you rode on, or the chemicals that you use as part of perfumes or shaving cream or whatever today, probably came on a railroad and most likely came on us. So when we think about pollinators, I've got this in two batches, right? It's a no-brainer. There's some simple things that just make sense for us. It fits our company's fabric. You see this, one of our thoughts of when you're part of the American landscape, you protect it. That's who we are. That's what we're about. And we own 1 million acres of land, which I think is somewhere between Delaware and Rhode Island, something like that in terms of the size. And of course we've got those ribbons that Doug talked about and you saw on the last page. And one of the interesting things that I've learned in this project is we generally have native soils that are right underneath the roadbed that have been protected for years. So that's all the good stuff. However, all the other things are really challenging. And when I was looking at that last slide of the county, or the last presentation and those county engineers, I kind of thought, that might be us, or that might be me in terms of some of the challenges we have to get ourselves over. So when it comes to the railroad, we're all about safety. It is the most important part of what we do. And so from a public safety perspective, we want less vegetation, not more. And from an employee perspective, we also want to make sure that our employees can see the cars that are coming to crossings, that can interact well with the public. And since 2000, we've had like 400 employees stung by various insects. So we don't really want to create more opportunities for them to have interaction. And then restricting the access for us promotes safe corridors. So the last thing we want is you coming onto our property, you, whoever that is, of helping us, making sure that we're doing the vegetation correctly. So we really tightly manage how people get onto the track and what they do once they're in the neighborhood. And then overall, our goals are kind of aligned with some of the survey results in the last presentation. We want to minimize maintenance and we want to minimize the spend. Because in this case, we're a for-profit company and we want to make sure that we're rewarding our shareholders too. So that's kind of where our head is. And trying to figure out, sounds great, could we actually make it work? So here's our initial thinking, that we want to learn through some projects and through others' expertise, like here, and to start small and build from there. And then, of course, do the other things that help the environment and help bring value to the 7,000 communities that we operate in. And so oftentimes when people think of a railroad, they think of, some issues with us, of noisy trains, noisy horns, trains that stop right at the crossing. Well, that's not our objective, of course. Instead, we want to provide good transportation that adds value for the communities that we're in. So our concept then, as we've talked this through, is that the start small and build from here is not necessarily starting with the right-of-way. And when we're talking through these slides with the Wildlife Habitat Council folks, was that just yesterday or 2 days ago? I can't keep track of the days. But Sarah's perspective was this actually can be helpful, right? You're seeing our thinking in progress as opposed to we've got this amazing program and let me tell you how great it is. So this is where our head is at this point. We're going to pilot some locations that have very few limitations as we start. So we're not really at this point thinking about the right-of-way, we're just thinking of spots. And I really appreciated seeing Doug's map, and those little dots were some of those dots, I think, in the long run, or at least in the short run, I should say, and maybe in the long run too. And we're looking at some locations that are site remediation locations for us. So we've got to do something. Why don't we take advantage of making them good for the environment as well? And we're going to figure out through some various geographies and various approaches and then figure out what works from there. The last couple of lines on this slide are interesting to me, and I really wish that the person who's really pioneering some of these projects was able to come. He's in California, and well, California is farther from Chicago than Omaha is. But quality before quantity, and quality over quantity is where our thinking is today, and we hope to live up to that. And then asking ourselves, what's a win? Well, I don't exactly know that. And Pam asked me at lunch, how do you measure success and all that? Well, I don't know. I think part of that is this working group of helping figure out some of those things. But a win might just be seeing a couple of bees and a couple of butterflies in locations that didn't have them before. So this is what we're up to. Some initial tests of the 8 places. Most of them are already in progress, and a couple of them we are still planning for some work, some starting work later this year. A variety of locations. You can see that half of them are in California, and then some other spots throughout the country. And the results on the right side are kind of interesting. Some are working and some aren't working quite so much. And so I want to show you 3 of those. This is Houston, Texas, and this is in our rail yard that is 4 miles from downtown. So if I use my pointer, which then this will be even more fun. I don't know how you use the pointer, and I don't want to create more problems. So, so you see the red, that's the rail yard, and the bottom left here is downtown Houston. So in this case, we're not out in the middle of nowhere, but that might actually be kind of helpful in this case, so that it's close in and people can see it maybe more so than those who don't get out to the rural parts. And you can see that the footprint of that yard is pretty large. If that's 4 miles, and you can see how big that circle is. And so where this spot is on the north side of that circle. And you can see then, and I put the dates on here back in April, they put down a mix of grass and wildflowers. And you can see just 9 days later, already you could see plenty of green, and it was quite a moist spring in Texas, so the timing was perfect. And here you can see in June some of the initial flowers, and just a month ago it looks pretty nice. So we think that that's a nice win. And you can see on the left hand of that top slide, or the top picture, that's the railroad running right along the left side. So pretty darn close from a right-of-way perspective. And yet this was a former rail-type plant, so we're not going to be developing on top of that. Likely nothing's going to happen to that land for a long time, so it's just perfect to be able to put that in. This is Coalinga, California, which is a former asbestos mine, and how in the world the railroad comes to have ownership of a former asbestos mine. But when you stretch back 150 years, it's we've gotten involved in businesses that whoever would have thought, right? So here's a picture of initial planning back in November on the left. 3 months later, as you know, it was an extremely good year for water in California, although ironically it was only average, and yet celebrating average far better than the 4 years before that. And one of the challenges in California, of course, is that things go dormant pretty darn quickly. So you go from that February picture to April and then to May, and yet we think that this is a good win from the initial indications. Another spot, Bakersfield, California, which is not too far from Coalinga, the results weren't nearly as good and had virtually the same conditions, except maybe the soil wasn't as good. And then this is what I thought was going to be the best success story. And when in January you had the AEP person talking, and I thought, oh, this is like perfect for Roseville. Roseville is our major yard in the west, and it's very close to Sacramento. And this was a spot that the guy that I mentioned who wasn't able to come, he works between on one side of this spot, and the yard office is on the other side of this land. And so he walks past it frequently because he has some back issues, and so he just gets out to walk. And he was walking past, and he said, why don't we put some native grasses here and some native flower pollinators here? So he made that happen back in January. And here we are yesterday. He took this picture 2 days ago, I guess. and well, it was a dud. So our thought was that with this land, we'd have 3 different approaches for the maintenance. We'd have one that was really heavy, one that was in the middle, and one that we had very little maintenance. And in the end, we're going to have to replant this because very little germinated. The only success we had, ironically, was on the hillsides, which didn't make any sense to me. If in a winter with plenty of moisture in California, I thought that would be what would wash off first. So, you know, we're learning, hopefully just like everybody else. So, turning for a second just to talk about Wildlife Habitat Council. I mentioned Sarah's involvement, and I hope you get to meet her if you haven't. But they're giving us some specific consulting at several of those sites. Here's what you might want to do, here's what you might want to think about. Also then building some basic seeding guidelines. And Sarah and one of her peers, Ashley, has spent some time talking with us and going and actually making a presentation to some of the people who are our contractors that help facilitate plantings. Well, what do you need? What would be helpful? What kind of information do you need? And we're looking forward to closing that out here in the next couple of weeks. And what they're building is regional seeding specs. This is from the Xerxes Society, some regions, and we're going to mirror that. There's a little bit of teasing because if you go back to look at the railroad route structure, Louisiana will end up being all by itself, and they were teasing the person who's there, but hopefully he's big enough to be able to handle it on his own. All right? So that's kind of a big run through quickly of where we are and what we've learned and what we're learning in the process. And our next steps are to finish those regional seeding specs and then capture the results from these tests, and then that will help us figure out where we go from there. I know even in just building that this list, let me go back. This list, it took some effort. It took coordination of a number of people, a number of parties that are doing the planting for us, just to pull this together, and then to pull the pictures together was challenging as well. So that tells me that whatever we build toward, and I know that Iris, some of those questions are on your mind today, that we've got to figure out how to make it simple and yet meaningful for everybody. So thank you very much, and appreciate being able to spend some time with you.